Ahku. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I have over 30 years of experience professionally and 20 years in private practice. However, the reason why I specialize in helping people replace toxic stress with inner peace is because of my personal experience. We are experiencing an unprecedented experience right now, this pandemic, but this is not the first time we've had worldwide crisis. I'm sure, okay, there we go. You remember 2008. Well, 2008, while the world was experiencing a crisis, I was also experiencing a personal crisis. I had many things, not all of them bad things, happen in a very short period of time. I got remarried. I got pregnant with my second child. I used to live in Brooklyn, New York, and then we bought a new big house in Westchester, right outside of New York. So there was a big move to this new house, and we planned on selling the house in Brooklyn, but we couldn't because of the financial crash. So then we ended up renovating and becoming a landlord, and that was new and stressful. I also moved my private practice from Brooklyn to Westchester, and I wasn't sure if the people in Westchester would be interested in my brand of spiritually based psychotherapy. So that was stressful. And then I was put on bed rest. And I can tell you, bed rest is misnamed. There is nothing restful about being stuck in bed for a busy person like me. And despite bed rest, my little one was born premature. So as you can see, a lot of stress was stacking up. This is me, and this was life, right? I was overwhelmed, angry, arguing all the time, considering getting rid of my new husband. Things were very stressful. And then somebody in this little family of mine was diagnosed with cancer, right? Once again, totally overwhelmed. And I'm embarrassed to admit it as a clinical psychologist, but my go-to stress management at that point was Oreo cookies. By the way, Oreo cookies are vegan, but they're not healthy. And soon I weighed more than I did when I gave birth to my daughter. Something had to change, something had to give. And as a psychologist, as a therapist, when I become overwhelmed, the thing I do is go back to therapy. In therapy, I was able to change things so that 2009 was vastly different than 2008. So in 2009, I created inner peace. I took what was before 2008, a long system of getting up and meditating for half an hour to 45 minutes every morning, doing some spiritual studies or studies of African psychology, and then an exercise. So I had about an hour to an hour and a half every morning to myself. Couldn't do that with all these people and all these things going on. And I was able to figure out how to cultivate inner peace. So 2009, things were still stressful. I had this blended family, and these are my girls. My big one used to babysit the little one while I was at work on Saturdays. It's one of my favorite pictures. Came out of work and found them passed out. So, but teenagers are stressful under normal circumstances. And as a blended family, it was really difficult, but I didn't need cookies this time. My little one was also experiencing some effects of being born premature. So she had physical therapy, speech therapy, and occupational therapy. Sometimes I had two therapists coming to the house on the same day. That was also stressful, but I was able to manage it. And the person with cancer, as you know, when somebody's diagnosed with cancer, that's just the beginning. That person had to have surgery, and then the surgery didn't get all the cancer and had to have radiation. And I was able to handle all of that while maintaining my inner peace. So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Okay. I've learned to replace toxic stress with inner peace, and I've written about that in my latest book, Cultivating Inner Peace. And so I'm going to share a little bit about that inner peace system that I created today. And it's been tested recently because, as you know, we're all going through this pandemic in 2020, and I happen to live right here. This purple circle is where I live, right in the middle of the New Rochelle containment zone, in walking distance from the synagogue. And my daughter's school has teachers that were in communication with the lawyer that is kind of case zero here in our area. So I was tested in terms of being able to maintain, or have been, and still am, right? Maintaining my inner peace in the midst of this pandemic. And I've been able to do it. We have been in this quarantine isolation since March 3rd. And I know it was March 3rd because it was my mother's birthday. It's the last day that I drove to Brooklyn to give her presents before I went to work. Things have been very stressful, but as I said, I've been able to maintain inner peace even though things have been stressful. So let me help you by sharing some things so that you can too. So cultivating inner peace, the system that I created, starts out with a foundation. And then step 1 is self-care. Step 2 is blocking negative energy. Step 3 is cultivating positive energy. And then you have to maintain it, right? Because you can cultivate all this stuff, but if you don't maintain it, how much is it really worth? And that's all from my latest book, Cultivating Inner Peace, A Sustainable System for Professional Black Women. Okay. Today, in the time we have remaining, I'm going to share some of that system with you. From the foundation section, we're going to talk about stress, and we're going to talk about the nature of energy. So we're going to talk a little bit about self-care. We're going to talk about cultivating positive energy, but we're not going to have time to talk about blocking negative energy, although that is really important right now in the midst of this pandemic. But we are going to talk about maintenance, and I hope to get you started in creating your own self-care kit by the end of our time together. All right, my promise to you today is that you are going to get 3 examples of how to cultivate inner peace that you can start using immediately. And I have 1 gift for you and to get you started on that self-care plan. All right, so the stuff that I'm sharing with you today is stuff that I share when I do workshops all the time. I've done compassion fatigue workshops for people in the healthcare field. And it's also stuff I share when I do workshops with the NYPD. I teach the hostage negotiators and the emergency response team how to deal with mental health and mental illness, how to use their words instead of their guns to help people. And I also teach them about the nature of stress so that they can learn to manage their stress better, so that they can be a force for good and stop killing so many of our own. But that's a different topic. So let's get into inner peace. I'm going to ask you to take that paper and pen, and what I want you to focus on for just a minute is to think about what's life like for you when you're at your best, when you're fully charged, when stress is low. How do you think? How do you feel? What do you do? How do you parent or take care of other people? And how do you interact with others? So I want you to just take a minute to jot that down. And while you do that, I'm going to check into the chat. Okay. Shawnee also says there's nothing restful about being on bed rest. I see lots of greetings. Okay. Okay. So, how are we doing on time? All right. I'm going to ask you guys to share later, but I just want you to take note of what it's like for you when you are at your best, when you're thinking, you're feeling, you're doing, how you parent, how you interact with others. Okay? And we're going to come back to that. But now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the nature of stress. Okay? And I'm going to share with you, I'm going to actually take this off, share in a second, my mashup of Dr. Daniel Siegel, who is a psychiatrist and has developed this hand model to describe what stress does in the brain. But as I learned more about stress and the nature of stress, I came across neuroscientist Dr. McLean's triune brain. So I have what I call Dr. Ahku's mashup of how the brain is on stress. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that you can see me in full screen for a second. Okay, so now imagine your brain, right? This hand is your brain. We have the lizard brain, the part of the brain we share with, say, lizards, the part that acts on full instinct, right? Lizards aren't known for their emotional experience, and basically they do whatever they need to sustain life. Then we have the mammal brain, right? This is the part of the brain that deals with emotions, right? Like my cat that runs away at the slightest sound to preserve his life, right? So that's a different part of the brain. And this part of the brain can communicate with that part of the brain. When there's a threat, it lets this part of the brain know to take over to preserve life. And of course, this is a simplification of how the brain works. Human beings are the most advanced, and we have what's called the prefrontal cortex, right? This is the part of the brain that thinks. This is the part of your brain you're going to use after this webinar to think about breakfast. Are you going to make something for breakfast? What are you going to cook? This is the part that makes decisions. So we have this part of the brain that can speak to this part of the brain that can speak to this part of the brain, right? So let's get back to our slides so that I can share some more. Oh, of course. I clicked off the wrong thing, so now it's going to take me a second to get back to sharing. Here we go. And okay, so when this part of the brain takes over, it is our system to preserve life, the fight, flight, and freeze system. And basically what happens is our nervous system is divided into two sections. The fight, flight, and freeze section takes over by accelerating our heart rate. It stops digesting things. Our liver starts to help us get more glucose into our blood system so that we can be ready to preserve life, to run, to fight, or maybe to freeze in order to take care of ourselves, right? But what would happen if this wonderful brain of ours stopped to think? If a big angry bear came running into the room where you are right now, and we stopped to think about what to do, right? What would happen is we'd be bred breakfast because we don't have time to think. So our wonderful brains disconnect the thinking part and go right down to the lizard brain, where we act on instinct. The problem is that we do this even when there are no life-threatening circumstances, because the thinking part of our brain can think up stress, right? So when we have a big exam, right, that feels stressful, the reason why, if you've ever had this happen to you where you're taking a big exam, you've studied, you know the material, but when you get into the room, you can't think of the answers, it's because this part of the brain has disconnected and you're starting to act on this part of the brain, which doesn't have any answers, right? Because it's not the thinking part of the brain. And that can happen. It doesn't necessarily happen fully. You know, this is on a continuum depending on how stressed you are and how much you think your life is threatened. But you cannot access the thinking part of your brain when you are in stress. Right? And acute stress, that's okay. You know, this cute little guy, can you tell he's stressed? Yes, you can. It's okay because we need to preserve life. The problem is that even when we are not in acute stress, these things are happening. This system is not made to be happening perpetually. It's made to happen short and then to go back to normal. When you allow yourself to be stressed for long periods of time, these are some of the things that happen. As you can see in this chart, in the body, you get headaches, stomach aches, infections. As I described before, I was getting really angry. You get anxiety, loss of confidence, sadness. Nightmares, worry, negativity takes over. Behavior, loss of sex drive, over or under eating, again, me and my cookies. And then you also decrease spiritual connectedness. All of these things can happen based on an over experience of stress, okay? So long-term stress leads to long-term problems. Overactive liver leads to gaining weight. Overactive heart can lead to high blood pressure. And what happens when we are overstressed and we're not getting enough rest is our body doesn't do the repair that happens when we are relaxed, when we are sleeping well. And therefore, stress doesn't cause ailments, but it exacerbates any illness you have. Okay. So I'm going to ask you, get back to that pen and paper and to think briefly about what's life like for you when you are depleted, when you're burnt out. How do you think? How do you feel? What do you do? How do you parent and take care of others? And how do you interact? So I'm going to give you just 1 minute, and then we're going to take you off mute, and I'm going to ask you guys to quickly share. Okay, and I'm going to check into the chat while you do that. Okay. All right, good questions. Somebody says the mouse looked familiar. The mouse looks familiar. That's how they feel on stress. Somebody's also echoing, yes, test anxiety. Tiffany's experienced that. Can we take everybody off mute briefly and tell me, what does it look like when you are burnt out, stressed?
I know I tend to forget things a lot, like leaving the door open or putting my phone in the refrigerator. None of my basics make sense.
Thank you. One more?
Yes, this is Helene.
Okay. We've got fire engines in the background. Let's put everybody on mute again. I'll unmute myself. Okay, so thank you. So now I'm glad that you know what it looks like when you are stressed. We want to make sure that you're conscious of that so you can do something about it. You can notice those first signs. Okay, so the antidote to stress is self-care. Okay. And self-care for me starts with understanding energy. Energy is all around us. Everything is vibrating. It has molecules that vibrates at different energies, right? And we can change that energy. And my favorite way of cultivating positive energy and changing energy is to think about the 5 senses. And this is something that you can all do, and it's something that doesn't need to take a lot of time or a lot of space. Okay. So one of my favorite ways of doing that is through symbols. I love symbols. These are a couple symbols I use all the time in my private practice. I started using Malcolm X as a symbol when I worked in my first job with people who were HIV positive, drug addicted, homeless, because Malcolm X is such a symbol of how people can go from being, addicts and selling drugs to being great leaders, right? An opportunity for us to change. And he is a symbol of that for me. I also use butterfly as a symbol of transformation. Okay. All right, why am I having difficulty? There we go. Words can be symbols, and this is one of my favorite symbols. It's one of the Adinkra symbols from Ghana, and it means basically, I fear no one but God. And for me, that's really important because I'm always helping people in my private practice stop worrying about what other people think and really focus more on what they believe to be true, to follow their spirits, to follow their understanding of God. Okay. Smell and we don't have a lot of time, so I'm not going to go really into this, but essential oils can help us calm down, and I talk a lot and help people learn how to use smell as a way to deal with their emotions and change the energy. Of course, we are what we eat. So there's a different energy if you're busy eating Oreo cookies. I've never heard of anybody binging on salad. So focusing on what we eat in times of stress is really important. And some of the things that I suggest is thinking about herbal tea. It's an easy way to help our systems calm down without having to do a lot of thinking. And so these are some of the things that I use. And I also strongly recommend Rescue Remedy, which is a Bach flower essence, and that also helps the nervous system calm down, deactivate the fight and flight system, and help the calming system take over. Okay. And we've already experienced the power of music, right, as a way of helping us calm down. And so I hope to play a little something for you so that you can just pay attention to how music really can affect you. Okay, so I'm not going to play this full song, and you should recognize it, but I want you, as you listen to it, to think about, how does it make you feel?
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break.
Okay, I'm sure you all recognize that song. I didn't play very much of it, but you know, even though that song's a little played out and a little old at this point, it's hard for me to hear it without wanting to dance, right? It definitely has an energy that helps you feel up and ready to move. Okay. And here's another one for you. And this one takes a little longer to get started, so I am going to let it play while I check the chat. As you listen to a few minutes of this song, I want you to note how it makes you feel. I'm going to let that continue playing in the background since it's only 2 minutes long. While I talk about how I really help people with music. There was one woman that I worked with, and I helped her create her inner peace. However, she was feeling stressed because she had 3 children. She had to get them out in the morning. And she said, sometimes, Dr. Ahku, at night, I just feel too tired to do the few things I know I need to do in the evening to make the morning run smoother. And I suggested she come up with a playlist of dance music. And she did, and then she came back the next week and said, Dr. Ahku, it worked like a dream. By the second song, invariably, I have energy to get up and to do those few things in the evening so that the morning goes so much smoother. So this is how you can use music to help you either get energy if you need energy to do the things you need to do, or to calm yourself. Let me share. This beautiful song that you're listening to is one of my favorites for when I'm leading meditation. It is African Symphony by Earth, Wind, and Fire. And it is just one of my favorite songs because it's got enough energy so you don't fall asleep while you're meditating, but it is still got restful and connected to native instruments. Okay, so I didn't put this picture in just because I love these beautiful muscles, but to remind us that the last of the 5 senses that we're talking about is touch. and touch is really important. And under other circumstances, I strongly encourage people to get massages, but even when there isn't a pandemic, people can't always afford massages. So something that you can use and you can even order now, it may take you a little time to get it, is a shiatsu pillow. But also know that things like Tai Chi and yoga can also, because they cause us to move and we're moving our skin, that also does some of the same thing as massage and touch. All right. If we had time, and we may go a little longer, I'm going to try to at least bring things to an end on time, but then I will stay a little later for anybody who wants to ask more questions and get a little support in creating their inner peace system. If we had more time, I would have you guys try these things out, the hand massage and the head massage, because those are ways that you can touch yourself, you can massage yourself, you don't need to pay anyone else, or you can do that with the people you are isolated with in this circumstance. But what I did want to say is that the free gift that I want to give you is the 5-day journey to inner peace, which has examples, 5 examples of these cards. And I don't know if you've noticed them as you've been going through, but I've created this 30-day card deck that is offered virtually. And so you can get the first 5 days for free to try out. And they're different prompts, things that take you only a few minutes to remind you to cultivate inner peace. They don't require anything major beyond maybe a smartphone so that you can ask Siri to tell you a joke, or Alexa, or whoever you have to tell you a joke. And you can get those. They are available here at ahku.com/resources. There are a few other resources there, but on the resource page, you'll see the 5-day journey to inner peace with this picture, and you just log in there and you are able to get those for 5 days and to interact with me, because I love it when people share with me their experience of the 5 days, and I read every email and respond personally. So, all right, let's get down to self-care, right? I want to hear from you now, again, briefly. So unmute everybody again, please. What do you do now for self-care? And now can be broadly defined as before the pandemic. But I really want you to focus on the current things that you already use. Focus on self-care. Who would like to share?
I've been exercising.
I say no to things that I've been saying yes to.
Okay. And
I've been
sun
gazing, and I've been drinking a lot of water.
Excellent. Okay, can we get 2 more people? Just quickly say your name and say what you do.
This is Bielka. I've been walking more with my husband.
Okay, 1 more.
Good morning, it's Simone. Yes.
Okay.
I think 2 of us started talking at the same time. Can you hear me?
I see that, so you can mute everybody, and I'll unmute myself again. And I see that a lot of people put into the chat. Meditation. Tia says she's been meditating, taking baths. Can you mute everybody again, please? There we go. Now I'm unmuted. Okay, so I see people have been visiting museums. I guess that's before the pandemic, doing their hair, exercising. So you all have some really wonderful things you do already to cultivate inner peace. And now you need to make sure that you change those methods so that they fit the current times. I'm going to give you one more example before we end. I want you to quickly write down And I'm going to just give you like 30 seconds to do this. So it's got to be the first things that come to mind. 7 things you're grateful for. So quickly write those down. Okay. So now that you've written down 7 things you're grateful for, throw one of those things into the chat for me. Okay, great. Excellent. I'm seeing so many wonderful things: family, husband, spring, food, health, love, children, breath. I like that one. God's grace, kids, relationships. Beautiful. Notice how it makes you feel to focus on the things you're grateful for. Okay. All right. And we have so much to be grateful for, even in the midst of this pandemic. Roof over my head, life, beautiful. All right. So now we're gonna take this one step further. Right? And many of you are probably familiar with gratitude and gratitude lists. But now, if I can get this thing to work, here we go. I want you to pick one of the things that you put on your gratitude list, and I want you to write a very brief thank you letter to that thing. I want you to write that letter as if you were writing a letter to a person that you were thanking for dinner or some other gift they gave you. I want you to pick one thing and take 1 minute to write a thank you letter to that one thing. Okay, and thank you. Some of you have actually written your little thank you letter right into the chat. Can we get Rachel? Rachel, will you be willing to share with us? Can we unmute Rachel? Can you share your thank you with
Sure.
everyone?
Sure. I said, Dear Spring, thank you for renewing us every year. And even with global warming, spring will come. No matter what mistakes people make, spring will come.
Thank you. How did it make you feel to actually write a thank you letter to a specific thing?
Lovely.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you. Okay, yes, this is an exercise that I worked with somebody, Ruth, that I met doing a workshop. And she said that she'd been keeping a gratitude journal for years, but had never done this exercise before. And that she found that it really helped her gain more depth and understanding why she was grateful for something. And it took her gratitude to a whole new level. So even if you've been doing this stuff for years, I know ways to help you find new depths and new levels with things. So thank you so much for experiencing that. Okay, let me close the chat. So I believe I fulfilled my promise already today of giving you at least 3 things that you could start doing immediately. So you can start doing that deep breath, right? The deep belly breathing. You can focus on your 5 senses and use music and other senses to help you create inner peace in minutes. And you can also focus on gratitude. Okay, why does that happen? There we go. What I want you to do, and make sure you do, especially when we finish this workshop, because I don't think you can fully do it in the few minutes we have today, is I want you to focus on the things that you can do for self-care. And what can you do every day, given the current circumstances? Can you find a corner to meditate in? You know, one of my favorite life hacks as a mom is to get up early before everybody else, so I have a quiet house so I can get my meditation in uninterrupted. How can you use music to support your positive mood? What can you do every week, every month, every year, and during this current crisis? So that's your self-care kit. I want you to write those things down so that you can focus on that when we finish this workshop, and really fill in what you can do right now during this crisis, every day, every week, every month, and every year for self-care. It all begins with self-care. There we go. And I want to bring you up to date before we end, because I talked about a lot of challenges that went on in 2008 and 2009. And when I spoke about 2020, I just spoke about the current pandemic. But there's a few things that you might be wondering what happened. So let me bring you up to date. Here we go. The person that was diagnosed with cancer in my family is now in remission. The person likes to say that they're cured, and has been in remission for quite a few years, and is healthy and doing well. My older daughter, that teenager that was passed out under her little sister, graduated from Cornell in 2015, ran the New York City Marathon, and is fully launched. She has a job working for Expedia, so she works in the travel industry, so we don't know what that's going to look like. But right now she is healthy. She's traveled all over the world. She's healthy and safe and in America, because she certainly could have gotten stuck anywhere. And that little girl, the premature baby, got her black belt in Taekwondo when she was 8. She is doing well and doesn't have any residual effects that we can see from being born premature. She speaks 3 languages. She speaks Chinese and Spanish as well as English, and is doing fine. And during this pandemic, we are all safely cocooned in our little bubble here in New Rochelle, and we are healthy. Some of our extended family is struggling, but we are sending them prayers and love and supporting them in the best ways we can during this pandemic. Okay, so just wanted to focus on a few more things, and then we're going to get to questions and answers, and I get to spend the rest of the time sharing. Self-care is not selfish, and so many of us don't take care of ourselves because we think it's selfish. But you know, when you've been on a plane, you know how the stewardess says you have to put your oxygen mask on yourself first before you take care of anyone else. That's because if you fall apart, then you can't be there to take care of anyone else. So it's really important to focus on self-care, even at times like this. I also want to give you a few tips, because I've given you a lot of information today, but the reality is sometimes for some people this will be enough. This will be all you'll need, and you will be able to be off and running, or you've already had a system that was working really well for you. But for others, you need a little more support. And I wanted to give you some tips and tools on finding that kind of support that you may need, okay, for achieving sustainable inner peace. If you are looking for somebody to support you, you want somebody that has an advanced degree. You know, anybody can get a coaching certificate in a weekend, but there's a lot of supervision and experience that comes with somebody that has a PhD or is a clinical social worker. So you want somebody that has an advanced degree. You also want somebody that has personal experience. I don't know about you, but I don't want to go to a dentist that has yellow teeth. I don't want to go to a doctor that weighs 800 pounds. You know, I look to see if the people who are supporting me and helping me are practicing what they preach. So you really want to get some sense that this person has walked the path that they're going to support you in walking. Not necessarily, of course, the same things, because everybody has their own path, but some sense that this person has personal struggles so that they can really resonate with some of the challenges you're going to have. And last but not least, not everybody that has an advanced degree or personal struggles knows how to help and support others. So you also want to make sure that this is somebody that has experience in supporting and helping other people. So if you find those three things, you will find somebody that can help you achieve sustainability in your goals of inner peace or other goals. All right. So the last thing we're going to do before I open things up to questions and answers is I want to share with you my absolute favorite stress busting technique. And I didn't say before in the midst of all this, the reason why the breath is so important and so helpful in deactivating the fight, flight, and freeze system is because out of that the nervous system, the one part that we can control is our breath. We can't control actively unless you have been meditating for 800 years and live on the top of a mountain. Most of us can't control how fast our hearts beat. Most of us can't control how much our liver is helping us release insulin into our systems or any of that stuff. The one thing we can control is the breath. And that's why the breath is so important in reducing stress, in deactivating the fight, flight, and freeze system, and activating the calming system. So I want to share with you my number one breathing technique, the breath square. This is the one that is my go-to, that I do all the time, anytime, because it's quick but very effective. I want you to, once again, note how you're feeling, although you are probably feeling much calmer now that we've done gratitude and all the other things we've done, but I want you to still note how you're feeling. I'm going to lead you through this. So I'm going to stop sharing after I describe it. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to inhale for a slow count of 4. You're going to hold the breath into your lungs for a slow count of 4. You're going to exhale to a slow count of 4, and then you are going to wait. You're not going to breathe in again until I count to 4. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing so that you can follow my finger. And the reason why I use my fingers is this is very effective when doing this. You can do this with young children that don't count that well, so they can follow your finger. You can feel free to follow my finger. You can trace a square of the screen that you have in front of you. You can close your eyes and just listen to the sound of my voice. Whatever works best for you, just follow your spirit on that. Okay, here we go. Inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, inhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, exhale, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. Okay, you can return to breathing normally. And Nikki, would you be willing to share your experience doing the breath square? Can we unmute Nikki? Or can I unmute Nikki? Can you? There we go. You're unmuted, Nikki. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. So previous and after, should I do it that way?
Sure.
Okay, so previous, I had been holding some tension up here, and also just mind chatter, uh, just with all the activities that are happening. And after the square breathing, I found my mind quieting. I found my whole body get hyper grounded, like fully aware of everything that is around me. And even I received some text messages of things that were giving me some anxiety that resolved themselves.
Wow.
So yeah.
Powerful.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Okay, yes, and I see in the chat that people are feeling grounded. Some people had a little challenge, you know, like with everything else, you have to practice. The more you practice, the easier it gets. But overall, people are feeling grounded and found it to be really helpful. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Okay, so that is it. Now I want to, it's 8 o'clock. So I want to honor our time and I want to bring this to a conclusion, but I want to let you know that I can stay on a little longer for anybody that would like to share, would like some more support. I can be here for a few more minutes. So thank you so much, everyone who showed up, who participated, who brought your energy, who tried everything out. I hope that this will help you find some quick and simple ways to find peace in the midst of the chaos that is going on right now, because we need to take care of ourselves so we can take care of our families. So thank you everyone for joining me. And with that, I'll bring this to a formal conclusion before we continue with anybody that can and wants to stay. Thank you.
Dr. Ahku, before people transition off, I want to acknowledge you just for being awesome and for just cultivating inner peace in just this short period of time and just doing what you do masterfully. And I have the benefit of working with you all the time. So I'm like, yes, to anybody who is experiencing you for the first time. And I always out this, and she laughs about it, but Dr. Ahku was my therapist during a very dark time in my life. And then also when I recently lost my daughter, she returned to provide that for me. So please do utilize her. She's awesome. What I also want to say, and we will post, is that we have a slide that provides you with information about how to give her a love offering. We're offering this series for free or complimentary. However, when you are moved and touched and inspired, a way to demonstrate your gratitude is to give the energy of money. Money is energy. So whatever you have, please do use her Zelle or her PayPal to offer up an acknowledgement in the form of money, energy, for her time and what she's contributed to us. If you do not have it, please don't be over there deactivating your inner peace by worrying about not being able to give Dr. Ahku money, because she's good, I promise you. However, we want to learn how to love on each other in various ways, and giving is a form of loving. It's one of the love languages. So we put that up, and I know Dr. Ahku, you had a special offer that I think we have a panel for that as well. And for those of you who didn't see the handles to give her the love offering or the donation, I put it in the chat and I will post it again and again. But we wanted to put the special offer up here so that you could see that as well. So let's check that out for a little bit. You can write down or screenshot of what it is that is up here so that you can follow up with the free offering that she put forth. Dr. Ahku, in the chat, there was a question about your book, and I know your book is called Cultivating Inner Peace, but I know you have written multiple books.
I have.
So, and that's probably on your website. So you can say a little bit about that as we have people, copy this down, or, go on Zelle or PayPal and, give you your love offering. So what do you want to say about the books you offer and those juicy things before we take more questions and you answer?
Okay, I want to say that my book, the latest book, is available on my website, drahku.com. And it's basically what we talked about today, but in more depth, so that you can really get the support you need in cultivating your inner peace. I have written other books, and those are also available, all available on Amazon. So you can still get them now. You don't have to go out to a bookstore. If you put in Dr. Ahku on Amazon, then they all pop up. And before we stop sharing, I want to share about the workshop tomorrow. Right, so let's make sure everybody knows, if they haven't registered already, for the wonderful workshop coming up tomorrow. Can you put that slide up? There we go. Excellent.
All right, so our sister Nikki Morgan is going to be holding space for our sexual energy, the basics. I'm like, the basics, I want to know all of it, but I don't want to be greedy. So Nikki is on here. She's a clinical sexologist. When I say she's on here, she's literally in the session with us, and she's been on for the last 3 days, just pouring into the facilitators that have been, leading and presenting over the last few days, and will be poured into tomorrow and co-creating with all of us who join again. So please do, if you didn't sign up, join us anyway. You have the link already. And so, Dr. Ahku, do you want to start taking additional questions or comments about? Okay, great.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that before people had to leave, we made sure that everybody knows about what's coming up tomorrow. Yay. Okay, yes, questions. And what is the best way to do this? Put your questions in the chat, I suppose, or we don't have the raise your hand thing on this one.
So it's up to you. You can just call on people. You know, I'm so.
It's there. It's under reactions.
It's under reactions. Okay, so raise your hand, and I can't see it though because I'm not the official moderator. So
okay.
Can Jofu please moderate and let me know, and anybody that has a question, I'd be happy to strive to answer you.
Or you can put it in the chat.
Yes, and I will look at the chat. And again, thank you everyone for coming and sharing your time and your energy. All right, new message.
Listen, if you have questions, please tap in, because this lady, y'all just don't know. So if there's something, if you're struggling with being able to sustain a practice, or if you want to find the right practice for you, because, you know, different things work for different people. If you're dealing with a specific issue right now that is impacting your inner peace, unmute and just get some coaching, get some support.
There's a question from Rachel. Can you talk a little about blocking negative energy?
And that's an excellent question. And I'll talk about it as it pertains to this specific crisis right now, although what I'm going to say is, I think, forever and always. It's really important to moderate how you get your information. What people do during these kinds of situations is they tend to overload themselves with information. Watching the news all day, or, you know, constantly checking in to see what the new mortality count is and who's infected and that kind of thing, especially when you get it from network news, where it bleeds, it leads, then that has a real negative effect on your spirit. So I suggest that you don't watch network news ever at all. Even when things are not in a pandemic, because they give you 40 minutes of death and destruction, and then 2 seconds of weather and, you know, a cat video or something. So you never want to get your news from network news. You really want to try to find reliable sources that give you the control. So if you read the New York Times, and you can scan the headlines, read as much of an article as you need to get informed, and then stop. I love NPR, because NPR, even when they cover things that are horrific, they have a way of covering them in more depth. You don't get the visuals usually, and you get to hear more of the human interest story. I remember I was especially affected by the shootings in Sandy Hook, the idea that little children were killed, and listening to NPR, they were talking about all the families around the school that took people in, right? And that was information that was helpful in balancing out the horror for me. So you really want to be focused on how not to let that negative energy in by moderating where you get information, how much information you take in, and cutting it off when you have updated. Right now during this pandemic, I basically check in the morning. I have a couple of websites. I do a quick check-in just to see if there's anything I need to know. And then that's it. And I trust that spirit will bring to me, and it always has. Any information I really need to know, spirit has brought to me. So we were ahead of the game with this pandemic because of that.
Dr. Ahku, Meta wanted to know if you take insurance.
Right now, the only insurance that I still accept is Aetna. But many insurance offer out-of-network benefits, and then I work with people on sliding scale. I see some people every other week to make sure things are affordable. So I try to work with people, and at this time, because I'm doing telehealth, I actually have a little more availability to really work with people, and I'm really trying to make sure that everybody gets the support they need during this pandemic. So, you know, we can talk about making sure that things are affordable for you, but also possible so that I can, you know, the love offering, as Shawnee says, so I can feed my family.
Sure.
And
I have a
Felicia,
question.
go ahead, Nikki.
So one of the things that I've witnessed so this is a general question, not personal, but is finding inner peace while being in a home with family, that sort of everything that never was talked about has built up and is being expressed in a way that is creating lots of headbutting, lots of challenges in communication, to points of yelling, like, you know, being in a pandemic, imagine 10 people in your home screaming, right? What would you suggest is a breakout technique, or you know, a self preserving technique, or something when these moments are in a heightened state?
Okay. I will give a general answer because, of course, without knowing the specific family and specific situation, it's hard to speak to any specific thing. But I'd say overall, each person has to take care of themselves, right? So you have to put up your own boundaries, and you may have to say, I can't talk now. This is not, you know, I need time, I need space. You might need to go for a walk so that you can get that time and space. But if these blowups keep happening, I suggest looking for a therapist that, and I've done this actually already, can do some telehealth with the family, right? And really help facilitate the conversation and get the family to a place where they can then take it from there to communicate around things. So, you know, you can set up with a therapist. These days, we are allowed to, on any platform, do telehealth, so that you can do a family therapy session and the therapist can help communication. It can be really difficult when families are trapped in these patterns of communication for people to really hear each other. So very often you need somebody to step in and to translate and to help the communication at least get started. So those are my suggestions for you to take care of yourself, to put up boundaries wherever you can, but if you really can't, then to try to get somebody to help facilitate communication.
I feel better.
Dr. Kubilka, my apologies if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly. What's the best way to keep your mind from wandering when focusing on breath during meditation?
To accept that your mind will wander and just keep practicing. You know, I think a lot of people, in fact, I know, because this happens all the time in my private practice where I teach people how to do meditation all the time. People always think that they're doing it wrong because their minds wander. But the reality is our minds are made to think. And we've been doing it for so many years that it's really hard for our minds not to wander. What you do as you practice, and that's why it is a practice, is you bring your mind back to focusing. So every time your mind wanders off on something, your job is just to try to bring it back to the breath, back to the counting, and to understand that it will wander, but you don't have to follow it. And the more you practice at it, the better you'll get at bringing it back to whatever you're focusing on, as opposed to letting it wander and deciding that, oh, that means that I can't do this. It's really advanced meditation stuff to have your mind be empty. And I think you can only really achieve that if you are in an ashram somewhere and you don't have to worry about what your kids are eating, and at this moment, whether your family is safe and healthy.
Sure.
The next question is, what about social media? Do you use it for community and ignore the negativity?
That's a good question. I actually only use LinkedIn personally because I decided that I was not really good at social media. I didn't follow up on it. I think each person has to answer that question for themselves. But they also, just like network news, you have to make sure that you are interacting with things that are uplifting. So you have to moderate your feed so that the people that are on your feed are bringing you joy, that are uplifting you and not bringing negativity, because otherwise when you read your feed, then you'll be cultivating negative energy as opposed to blocking it. So that really, it's okay to give yourself permission to decide who is going to be in your feed and who's not. And that is perfectly okay, but I think it's hard for people to do that. And also to understand that in social media, for the most part, people post the good things, right? And so sometimes we start comparing ourselves to what looks like a perfect life, but it's just a snapshot. So to always remember that, you know, people post the good things and you're only getting a snapshot of what's going on with them, so that you're not comparing yourself. And that's one of the downfalls with social media. Sometimes people start comparing themselves and then feeling really negative about themselves because they feel like they're not having all these good things in their lives. So if you start to feel like that, again, focus on less social media and more on gratitude for what you have.
This is a comment, but there's a question in it.
Okay.
You read through the words, read between the words. My mother and children don't respect my boundaries, plus we're in an apartment.
Ah, yes. I remember apartments, small, difficult. So you have to reinforce your boundaries, and that can be really difficult. And this is one of those things that it often takes months for me to help somebody work through it, identifying your boundaries and then reinforcing them and being okay with that. So if your boundary, let's just, you know, for argument's sake, is this is your bedroom. It's a small apartment, but this is your bedroom, and you don't want people coming in without knocking or uninvited, then every time somebody does it, there has to be a consequence. Right? And whatever that consequence is it has to be something you can live with, but you have to decide on that. The reality is we cannot change other people. We cannot force other people to do what we want them to do. However, based on what we do and how we change ourselves, other people will often pivot to deal with that if we're consistent. But the thing that people have difficulty with is that consistency. Whatever the consequence is, then you have to be consistent with it so that they will understand that you are reinforcing this boundary, that this boundary is real. And once they get that the boundary is real, people generally start to, you know, behave accordingly. But as long as they see that boundary as a suggestion, then why should they, you know, honor it? So that's the kind of thing that you might want to touch base with me personally for a one-on-one conversation to help you with a little more coaching on that, because I'm giving you, you know, general suggestions, but I can only imagine how challenging that must be right now when it's so difficult to get away because we are all trapped in these spaces together.
I did have one question, but it's a follow-up to what you're doing. How do you suggest one go about suggesting seeing someone like you in households like that? What is the conversation or the lead-in that you would suggest to say, hey, I think we should, you know, going from screaming to, hey, I think we need to go and see Dr. Ahku?
Again, that's a hard one to answer without the specifics, because psychology, you really have to understand what the buy-in is for this other person, right? You can never tell somebody else what to do, but if you can figure out what's in it for them. So for example, if you know this person also doesn't like yelling, right? They're also uncomfortable with all of this. Then you can say something like, well, I don't like the yelling, you don't like the yelling, and the only thing I can think of is that we need somebody to help us find a better way to communicate. And I know somebody that can do that. Are you willing to give it a try? And if they're not willing to give it a try, you can also say, well, you know what? I'm going to try it. I'm going to talk to this person and see if they can help me. I'd like us to do this together, but you can't force anybody. And I've worked with families, but I've also worked with individuals very effectively in changing family dynamics. Because as I said before, you can't make anybody else change. But if one person in a system changes, then the system changes, right? The system is forced to pivot. It's faster and easier if you can work with the whole system at once, but even working with one member of the system. So just remembering that you can't force anybody, but you could always choose for yourself. And in this, even in this situation right now where it may not be easy to get privacy, you can go sit out in your car, you can go for a walk and talk to your therapist. I have the burden of the privacy, right? I have to make sure that people are not overhearing me as you're talking, but you can go for a walk, you can find some place where you're not around people if you need to in order to have those conversations. Any other questions?
Something in the chat.
Okay.
How do you handle when you live alone? I live alone, and I'm not able to see any of my family except my home attendant. And once she leaves, then I'm by myself.
Then I suggest a lot of this, right? A lot of Zoom, phone calls, and I know some of these applications are even providing free trials so that you can connect with people. Not as good as in person, but definitely better than just isolating. Also, a lot of churches have online spiritual services. So finding the ways to connect with people that you can. So really setting things up so that you know that this time and day, you're going to talk to this person. In fact, my mother, who is 72, is in that situation. She's alone in her apartment in Brooklyn. So I'm making sure that I'm connecting with her on a regular basis. I'm making sure my daughter connects with her on a regular basis. And for some of my other family members, we set up a family group text. So every morning, somebody chimes in with good morning, everybody, so that we are finding ways to feel connected even when we can't be together and we're isolated. So I suggest you figure out who you can connect with. Therapy is also a nice connection, and somebody that, situation like a therapist can help you figure out how to connect and what is working for you in terms of connecting with people. But definitely Zoom has been, I can't tell you how many people have talked about using Zoom and FaceTime to stay connected with family when they didn't do that before.
I just want to tell you, thank you for y'all doing this. This has really been helping me. A friend of mine invited me to it, and it's really helping me. Even though, I feel a little sad about being alone, but this has really helped me a lot, very, very much. And I want to tell y'all, thank you for doing such a great thing to help people, figure out how to, push past all of this stuff. Thank you very much.
You are so welcome. And I hope you attend every day so that you can connect in this way. I thank you so much for coming and sharing your energy and your question, because if you have that question, I know, some other people that are still with us do as well.
Dr. Ahku, we have a question from someone about setting up sessions. So I know we put your contact information up earlier, but if you could share really quickly how folks can contact you so that they can set up, at least a conversation about what that might look like, that would be great.
Okay. You can send me an email directly, and that the same information for PayPal and Zelle info@Ahku is one of my email addresses. And as I said, I answer every email personally. You can also go on my website, and I'm offering some free 15-minute check-in sessions with people, and you can sign up for one of those. It's on the first page of the website. So you'll see, I think they're inner peace can't remember if they're inner peace sessions. I think they're inner peace sessions. And so that's free for 15 minutes. I won't try to sell you anything. If you're interested in therapy, we certainly can talk about that, but it'll take you to my calendar where you can directly schedule a time for us to meet together. And we'll meet like this on Zoom, where you can see me and I can see you, and we can talk about what's going on with you and how I can help.
Awesome. So, are you good to complete, Doc?
I am good to complete. In fact, I need to get to telework. Because work hasn't completely stopped just because we are home in our little bubble. So this is a perfect time for me to complete because I have a meeting at 8:30. So thank you again, everyone, for coming, everyone who stayed, for staying, for connecting, for sharing your energy with me and everyone else. This has been fabulous. Thank you again, Shani, for following your spirit and creating this powerful place for us to share and for people to get support during this unprecedented experience. I mean, I every day think, my gosh, is this really happening? And I know that if I'm thinking that, other people are thinking that. And, you know, hearing about all these challenges that people are going through, it's so important that they have leaders like you helping healers like us connect with the community. So thank you again for that.
Pleasure. Love you much. And y'all all have a great, great day. Until tomorrow.
Ashe, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a peaceful day.
Peace.
Peace, love, and namaste.